Beneath a blood-red sunset, Tanzania's Serengeti National Park stretched endlessly, a vast savannah where life and death intertwined in an eternal dance. The dry season had descended, harsher than ever. The earth cracked like weathered leather, and the air shimmered under the relentless sun. Rivers that once thundered had dwindled to feeble trickles, every creature locked in a desperate struggle for a single drop of precious water. This was a time when nature's balance hung by a thread, and only the strongest endured. On the southern edge of the Serengeti, Elias, a Maasai herder, stood silently amidst this unforgiving land. He was a man of few words, his sharp eyes reflecting a profound bond with the wild, yet a deep wound lingered in his soul. 2 years earlier, his younger sister had slipped away during a fever, leaving him with a helplessness he could never shake. Now he lived among his cattle, seeking solace in the steady rhythm of the plains. That evening, as the sun sank lower, Elias guided his herd back to the boma, a protective enclosure, to shield them from the night's predators. The air was thick with the scent of dust and dry grass, the rhythmic clinking of cattle bells a familiar comfort. But then, he froze. A faint metallic tang drifted on the breeze, and there, etched into the parched ground, were lion tracks, larger than any he'd ever seen, leading toward a rocky outcrop where shadows stretched long and dark. Heart-pounding, Elias followed the trail. As he rounded the rocks, his breath caught in his throat. A majestic male lion lay sprawled before him, its golden mane streaked with blood, a deep gash in its side forcing ragged, labored breaths. This was no ordinary predator. It was dying, its once fiery golden eyes dulled by agony. Instinct screamed at him to turn back, to protect his herd, to leave the beast to its fate. But another feeling stirred, the memory of his sister, and the gnawing guilt of failing to save her. He stepped forward, gripping his wooden staff tightly. The lion lifted its head, their eyes locking. In that gaze, Elias saw a silent plea. Could a man save a fierce lion without losing his own life? What happens when compassion collides with survival? Join us in this tale to discover if Elias can change the destiny of both man and beast. Don't forget to subscribe to Animal Kisa for more heartfelt wildlife stories. Elias was leading his cattle across a shallow stream, the soft gurgle of water beneath their hooves a soothing hum. The sky blazed a brilliant orange as the sunset spilled across the sprawling Serengeti plains. Cool air carried the scent of dry grass and dust, blending with the low murmur of the herd. Suddenly, an odd sound shattered the calm, a faint, feeble roar echoing from the distance. It lacked the commanding power of a lion's usual cry, instead trembling with pain and exhaustion. A desperate whisper lost in the vastness. Elias paused, tilting his head to listen. His pulse quickened as he strained to locate the source. Taking a deep breath, he tightened his grip on his wooden staff. With the instincts honed as a Maasai herder, he knew something was wrong. Entrusting his herd to a nearby companion, he set off cautiously toward the sound. Each step was light yet deliberate on the cracked earth, his keen eyes scanning for hidden threats. Near a towering acacia tree, its shadow stretching long across the plains in the fading light, Elias stopped, dead. There, beneath its branches, lay a massive figure, a regal male lion, its once glorious golden mane now matted with fresh blood. A deep wound oozed from its front leg, the crimson soaking its fur and pooling in dark streaks on the ground. The lion's breaths came heavy and uneven, each one a battle to cling to life. Elias held his breath, keeping a safe distance as he studied the injury. He suspected a territorial fight, or worse, a human trap, had brought the beast to this state. The lion raised its head, its golden eyes piercing into Elias's. The stare was sharp but powerless, stripped of its usual menace. In its depths, Elias glimpsed raw pain and desperation. A strange sensation welled within him, fear of the predator's presence tangled with curiosity at its vulnerability. He stood rooted, his mind torn between flight and staying. Raised in the Maasai tradition, where lions embodied both strength and terror, Elias had been taught from childhood to respect their danger. His father's stern warning echoed in his memory. Never approach a predator unless you wish to become its prey. Those words were a survival creed in this harsh land. Even wounded, this lion remained a threat, One weak swipe could end him, yet those golden eyes held him captive. No longer fierce, they silently begged for mercy, pleading with him not to abandon it in this life or death moment. Elias felt an so inexplicable connection, a flicker of compassion rising against the fear roaring in his head. He thought of his sister, lost to that fever 2 years ago. He'd watched her fade, powerless to act. That pain still burned, and now, facing this lion, he wondered if he could let another life slip away without trying. Elias stood there, wrestling with his instincts and his heart. Approaching could cost him everything, but turning away would haunt him forever. After a tense moment, he drew a steadying breath, tightened his grip on his staff, and took a slow step forward. He kept his distance, watching the lion's reaction. It stared back but didn't move to strike. Kneeling carefully, he examined the wound from afar, realizing the beast wouldn't survive the night without help. The choice was made. Elias rose, turning back to his herd to gather supplies, silently vowing not to let this lion die. He knew the risk, but he also knew it was right. Elias stood a short distance from the lion, his gaze fixed on the creature gasping beneath the tree. Once the king of the plains, it now looked pitiful. Its front leg bleeding profusely, its golden fur caked with dirt. Its roar was a frail whimper, more plea than threat. Elias felt a storm of emotions. Half fear, half an old pain reignited. In that moment, memories of his sister, Amina, crashed over him. 2 years ago, beneath a similar crimson sunset, a hyena had attacked her. He could still hear her scream, cutting through the stifling air. Feel his feet pounding the earth as he raced to her side. See her lying still, blood pooling around her. He'd been too late. He couldn't save the one he loved most. That regret had never left him. It was a thorn in his heart, growing sharper with time. Now, staring at this dying lion, Elias felt fate testing him again. He couldn't stand by and watch another life fade before his eyes. A vow echoed within. I won't let another life die in front of me. That resolve blazed like fire, burning away his hesitation. Even knowing the danger, Elias no longer cared. He had to act, not just for the lion but to atone for his past, to ease the guilt that had caged him for years. With a deep breath, he gripped his staff tighter. Carefully, he tore a strip from his weathered shirt, preparing it as a bandage. Step by slow step, he approached the lion, each movement deliberate, like walking a tightrope between life and death. The lion lifted its head, its golden eyes glinting with wariness. It growled faintly, but the sound held no strength. Elias saw its exhaustion, its inability to fight. He knelt, keeping just enough distance to study the wound without startling it. His breath quickened, but his hands stayed steady. Up close, Elias spotted a broken arrow lodged deep in the lion's leg. The arrowhead had pierced the thick hide, leaving only the shaft jutting out amid dried blood and festering flesh. This wasn't nature's doing. It was human cruelty, likely hunters or poachers. Anger flared in Elias's chest. He knew poachers still prowled these lands, defying the law, and this lion was their victim. Without a moment's hesitation, Elias made up his mind to act. He gently set his staff on the ground, clutching a piece of cloth in his left hand while his right hand slowly reached for the lion's leg. The beast let out a low groan but didn't thrash. With careful precision, Elias gripped the broken arrow's shaft and yanked it free with a firm pull. The lion roared in agony, its massive frame shuddering, yet it stayed still, as if it somehow knew he was trying to help. Blood gushed from the wound, and Elias swiftly wrapped the cloth tightly around it, pressing hard to stem the flow. Throughout the ordeal, Elias never took his eyes off the lion. A strange connection flickered between him and this wild creature, something he couldn't quite name. When the wound was finally bandaged, he sat back, letting out a shaky breath of relief. The lion rose slowly, its legs still trembling but strong enough to move. It turned its head, fixing Elias with one final look, its eyes glinting with what might have been gratitude, before limping off, vanishing into the shadowed expanse of the savannah. Elias stood there, watching the lion disappear, his heart swelling with a rare peace. He had done for this animal what he couldn't do for Amina. But little did he know, this single act was about to open a new chapter in his life, one brimming, with surprises and dangers yet to unfold. The lion struggled to its feet, its front legs quivering slightly beneath the makeshift bandages Elias had crafted from strips torn from his own shirt. It drew a deep, shuddering breath, its broad chest rising and falling as if reclaiming its innate strength. Then, with a slow, powerful turn of its head, the animal prepared to leave. Elias remained rooted to the spot, a hollow ache mingling with an indescribable pride. He had just saved a majestic creature, something he'd never managed to do for his sister long ago. But as the lion took its first steps, a tiny detail caught his eye, freezing him in place. A crescent-shaped scar stood out on the lion's left shoulder, stark against its dark golden fur. It wasn't something he could ignore. Elias squinted, racking his brain to place it. Then, like a lightning bolt through his mind, the memory hit. Months earlier, under a bright moonlit sky, a lion bearing that same scar had raided his livestock. It had slaughtered nearly half his herd, the animals he and his family had tended tirelessly to survive. He could still feel the helplessness and fury that had consumed him as he stood amid the chaos. He'd sworn then to hunt that lion down and kill it for revenge. But now the brutal truth stared him in the face. The lion he'd just saved, the one he'd spent hours tending to, was that very avenger. His heart pounded, his breaths growing ragged. Stunned, he couldn't fathom that he'd unwittingly rescued the enemy that had brought him so much pain. Rage flared within him, a wildfire stoked by the wind. Yet, at the same time, a strange conflict wormed its way into his thoughts. He'd just shown this creature compassion. How could he betray his own actions? Elias stood motionless, his fists clenched so tight his knuckles blanched. What should he do? Part of him itched to draw the dagger at his hip and end it right there, to settle the score for all he'd lost. But another part, the merciful side he'd awakened by saving the lion, whispered that he couldn't kill a creature he'd just nursed back to life. The inner turmoil ripped at him, as if two warring souls were clashing inside his chest. Then something miraculous happened. Instead of stalking off as Elias expected, the lion paused. It turned, its golden eyes locking onto his. Gone was the ferocity, the wariness. In their place shimmered something Elias had never seen in a wild beast. Gratitude, perhaps, or a deeper emotion he couldn't name. And then, in a move no one could have predicted from such a fierce predator, the lion lowered its head and gently pressed its forehead against Elias's trembling hand. He froze, scarcely believing what was happening. The warmth of the lion's touch seeped into his skin, strange yet profound. This wasn't the act of an enemy. It was a silent thank you, a bond that defied the divide between man and beast. Elias's chest tightened, tears spilling unbidden from his eyes. All his anger, all his hatred dissolved, giving way to a reconciliation he'd never known before. He took a deep, shaky breath, his voice barely a whisper as it slipped from his dry lips. "I forgive you." The words weren't just for the lion. They were for himself, a release of the pain and losses he couldn't undo. In that moment, Elias felt it. Both he and the lion had crossed the chasm of enmity, forging an extraordinary connection between two beings who should have been irreconcilable. The lion raised its head, gazing at Elias once more, its eyes seeming to sear this moment into eternity. Then it turned, its steps steady as it melted into the vast, darkening savannah. Elias watched until its form faded completely from sight. He knew then that his life would never be the same. He'd learned a profound lesson about compassion and forgiveness, gifts he never imagined he could offer an enemy. And perhaps deep in the wild soul of that lion, it too had shifted its view of humankind. Elias stood alone in the sprawling savannah, the setting sun painting the knee-high grass in shades of gold. After freeing the lion from its trap, a tremor still lingered in his chest, a strange harmony with a creature he'd once called foe. But as he turned to leave, something small glinted among the blades of grass. He crouched down and plucked up a broken arrow, its wooden shaft weathered, its tip chipped. He held it close, turning it over in his hands to inspect it. Suddenly, his heart raced as he spotted a familiar mark etched into the wood, a pattern of straight lines and tiny dots he knew by heart. It was the mark of the Maasai, and more than that, it was his mark, carved into arrows he'd crafted for hunting years ago. Memories rushed back like a gust of wind. Days spent under an acacia tree, his young hands shaping wood and etching his family's symbol into each piece. It had been a point of pride, a claim staked in the boundless savannah. But now that pride twisted into horror. The realization crashed over him. This arrow, born from his own hands, might have been taken by someone and used to wound the lion he'd just saved. The ground seemed to sway beneath him. Though he hadn't loosed the shot himself, it bore his signature, and it had brought suffering to a creature he'd just forgiven. He stood reeling, struck by the weight of his unintended role in the lion's pain. Elias gripped the broken arrow tightly, his fingers clenching so hard that a sharp pain surged through his knuckles. Who could have done this? Was it someone from his tribe, or a stranger who had stumbled upon his old arrows? A storm of anger and confusion churned within him. Yet, above all, it was the gnawing guilt that tore at his soul. He had once believed that saving the lion was his redemption for past mistakes, but now he saw the bitter truth. He had unknowingly fueled a cycle of suffering. He lifted his gaze to the horizon, where the sun dipped low, painting the sky in hues of gold and amber. The lion was gone, but its memory lingered. Those deep, soulful eyes and its halting, limping stride etched into his mind. Could the creature sense the turmoil within him? He was both its unintended tormentor and its savior. The ache in Elias's chest wasn't just from the shattered arrow. It stemmed from a dawning realization. Every action, no matter how small, rippled outward with consequences he couldn't foresee. His trembling hand slipped the arrow fragment into his pocket. He had to uncover the truth. Who had taken it? And why? More than that, he recognized this as a brutal lesson in responsibility, a fragile thread tying humanity to the natural world. As he turned to leave, darkness crept over the savannah, but a flicker of resolve ignited within him. He would confront his past, no matter the cost. Back in his village, the weight of duty pressed heavily on Elias's heart. He was determined to track down whoever had stolen his arrow and wielded it for illegal hunting in the Serengeti. Without a moment's hesitation, he reached out to the rangers of Serengeti National Park, pouring out his story. From the day he rescued the lion, to the gut-wrenching moment he found his mark on the broken arrow. With raw sincerity and unwavering resolve, Elias vowed to safeguard the wildlife, seeking to atone for his unintended mistake. The rangers listened with compassion and agreed to join forces. From that day forward, Elias shed his identity as a simple herder and stepped into a new role, a protector of nature, fighting against poaching. As a radiant sunset unfurled across the boundless plains, Elias stood atop a hill, his eyes tracing the vast expanse. A quiet peace settled in his heart, knowing the lion, now a silent companion, was roaming free somewhere out there. A faint smile curved his lips. His journey of redemption had begun, rich with purpose. Elias's path teaches us that even the smallest actions can leave lasting echoes. More crucially, it proves that it's never too late to right our wrongs and spark meaningful change. Protecting nature isn't just a duty, it's a bridge back to our own humanity. If Elias's tale has stirred something in you, share your thoughts below. Your words fuel a shared love and responsibility for the wild. Don't forget to subscribe to Animal Kisa for more moving stories of wildlife and conservation. Your support keeps this mission alive. Thank you, and see you in the next video.